So this video here is a classic. There's a Yale researcher who went on CNN to talk about the media, mainstream media, and the way they do their coverage and who they're appealing to and whatnot. There was a little experiment that they put together where they paid Fox viewers to watch CNN and see how that changed them. As you watch this video, I'm going to tell you this in advance. First of all, soak in how hilariously awkward everybody in the video is. There's one guy who says nothing. He's hilarious. You're going to see why. Just watch his mannerisms and stuff as the talk is happening. The guy who's talking is hilarious. You're going to see why. It's the way he delivers what he's saying. And Brian Stelter is hilarious because of his anchorman pose where he's trying to be here I am a serious man. I love it. I love everything about this. The optics of this are hilarious. But also, the Yale researcher sort of low-key owns Brian Stelter hard without Brian Stelter even realizing. Take a look.
So, Josh, you all call this partisan coverage filtering. And basically, you're proving what we've sensed for a while, which is Fox viewers are in the dark about bad news for the GOP.
That's right. Fox and CNN cover different issues, and Fox News predominantly covers issues that make the GOP look good and make Democrats look bad. And on the flip side, CNN engages in this partisan coverage filtering as well that we find. For example, during this time, the Abraham Accords were signed, and these were the agreements where Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain signed a major peace agreement. And we see that Fox News covered this really major accomplishment about 15 times more than CNN did. So we established both networks are really engaging in this partisan coverage filtering. It's not about one side, it's about the media writ large.
I think you're engaging in some both sidesism there, Josh.
Not trying to lay out a moral equivalency. It's not about what an objective standard is. It's really about how all networks do engage in this. And in order for viewers to get a realistic picture of the world, we need viewers to see all types of information. And unfortunately, what we find in this study is that the viewers don't want to engage in watching all sides. So as David mentioned, we see that we pay them for 4 weeks to watch CNN, but then after those payments stop, they go back to watching Fox News. So even though we try to incentivize viewers to watch both Fox and CNN, they don't want to engage in that hard work. They want to really just watch the side that makes them feel good. And this is why the media has such an important responsibility to cover both sides, to hold both parties accountable.
That video is awesome. First of all, the guy who's talking most of the time, he doesn't even blink. He's and now let me tell you why the people who watch CNN are being biased in favor of a Democratic direction, and the people who watch Fox News are being biased in favor of a Republican direction. And I'm not allowed to move my head. I will keep my head dead still. So he's got that going on. And then you got the guy with the glasses on. He's sitting there the whole time it was very odd. The whole thing was odd. And then, of course, you had Brian Stelter sounds like you're engaging in some both sidesism there. I am very intelligent. 7 people watch my show. That was every part of that made me giggle and laugh and smile. It was glorious. All right, so let's go through what the actual points are. The argument is, hey, we did this study, and it's very clear that Fox News biases their coverage in favor of Democrats in favor of Republicans. And Brian Stelter was that's right up his alley. He wants to hear that. But then, as soon as he starts getting happy and giddy over being told what he wants to hear, then the guy brings up, yeah, and you guys do the same sort of partisan thing on the other side. You do bias your coverage in favor of Democrats. And he actually brought up a great example there when there was the peace agreement signed between, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Israel and the Gulf states. I have no doubt that Fox News covered that way more than, CNN and MSNBC because it's something where nominally they'd give Trump credit. Now, by the way, you could talk about all the facts with that peace agreement. For example, one of the main reasons why we ended up getting it is because of corruption. Jared Kushner was directly involved in that deal. Jared Kushner, we just covered the story earlier about how Jared Kushner is getting $2 billion from Saudi Arabia, and Jared Kushner covered up the crime of the killing of Jamal Khashoggi to look after MBS. So, one of the reasons why we're getting the peace deal is because it's I'll cover up your vicious war crimes if you cover up mine. We can make friends now. So the way it was birthed was perhaps not the best. And of course, the nepotism of Jared Kushner even being there in the first place and Ivanka even being there in the first place, whatever. But like, yeah, on paper, if you get peace is better than not peace. And so, but CNN probably barely talked about it. And that was a great example of like, here Fox News was giving coverage because it's their team and their guy who did it, whereas CNN didn't. I'm sure there's a number of examples of this that we can point to. I'm sure that, when Trump freed Alice Johnson, that probably got more coverage on Fox News. That was one of the few good things Trump did, or the First Step Act. I'm sure that got more coverage on Fox News. It's not ideological. It's more partisan than anything else. And, the idea that there was a time, I think, when Fox News, of course, has always been the Republican propaganda network. And there was a time when CNN and mostly CNN, it was like we're the neutrality network. We're just going to try to, be down the middle no matter what happens. But at some point that shifted, and CNN and MSNBC are both the Democratic Party cheerleader network. Now, just so you understand, that doesn't mean they're left-wing. It doesn't, because again, they're not ideological. They are partisan. And so they will find ways to give credit to the establishment of the Democratic Party. That seems to be the gist of it. And again, I'm sure there are countless examples of that. Look how they defended Andrew Cuomo. It's like, of all the Democrats that are indefensible, they found a way to defend him for the longest time. And then when all the scandals broke, they largely buried them, So I think the study's interesting. Now, what ended up happening at the end is fascinating, where even if you pay them for like 4 weeks to watch CNN, the people who liked Fox News went right back to Fox News. And they said their conclusion on that is viewers basically want to be told what they already believe. They want to go to where they're already comfortable. And, I think that I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, to just have your priors reaffirmed, to just have confirmation bias till the end of time. I think it would be much better if people searched out for outlets that they felt were as objective as humanly possible and as honest and authentic as humanly possible. That's what I try to do on this show. That's not to say I don't have an ideology and I don't have a perspective. I do have those things, but I'm honest about that ideology and that perspective, and I give it to you up front, and you can like it or dislike it, but I'm trying to be as honest and upfront and authentic as humanly possible. And unfortunately, you don't really have that in mainstream media, and people are just going to go back to what makes them feel comfortable time and time again. But for what's interesting is the argument from Stelter was like, oh, you're doing a little both sidesism there, huh? Trying to swat aside the idea that CNN and Fox News are comparable in any way. But the response to that is like, the guy makes a good point. He's like, I'm not making a moral equivalency, more of like, it's just an empirical fact that I'm talking about. So in other words, even if I think the Democratic Party is not as bad as the Republican Party, if you do your propaganda for the Democratic Party, I think the effect of what you're doing is less deleterious and negative. But you're still doing propaganda for the Democratic Party. Like, that's effectively the point that he's making, And I think that that's true. So in other words, if Stelter says, you're doing some both sidesism there, the response is basically like, yeah, because in this instance, it's true. It's true. Like, you're the Democratic Party propagandist. They're the Republican Party propagandists. Think what you want about the separate parties. They're different in some respects, of course, but you are doing Democratic propaganda. They are doing Republican propaganda. So it's not like, Stelter's just not that bright. I mean, I'm sorry to be a dick about it, but he's just not that bright. He's not like equipped to have this level of a conversation and to really understand the nuances of the study or what's going on here. So, but again, I come back to my favorite part about this, which is everybody looks so silly there. Everybody, you got the glasses guys like, and then you got the other guy who's, and I think that CNN functions like this. And you got Brian Stelter. Yes. Do you guys like me yet? Do you take me seriously? No, Brian. No, we don't. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.